Diodorus Siculus was an ancient Greek historian from Sicily who lived during the 1st century BC. He is remembered primarily for writing one of the largest and most ambitious historical works of the ancient world, the Bibliotheca Historica, or Historical Library. This enormous project originally consisted of 40 books and attempted to tell the history of the world from mythological times down to Diodorus's own era. Although much of the work has been lost over time, a significant portion still survives and continues to provide valuable information about the ancient Mediterranean world. Diodorus was born in the Sicilian city of Agirium, known today as Agira. Beyond this fact, very little is known with certainty about his personal life. Ancient writers rarely discussed him directly, and almost everything historians know comes from Diodorus's own writings. One later Roman author, Jerome, briefly mentioned him in a chronicle and stated that Diodorus became famous around 49 BC as a writer of Greek history. Aside from this short reference, the historical record remains largely silent about his life. Some scholars have pointed out an interesting detail connected to his hometown. One of the few surviving Greek inscriptions discovered in Agirium mentions a man named Diodorus, son of Apollonius. While it is impossible to know for certain whether this inscription refers to the historian himself, the coincidence has attracted scholarly attention. Evidence from his writings suggests that Diodorus was still active around 21 BC, meaning his literary career likely stretched across several decades during the final years of the Roman Republic. The greatest achievement of Diodorus's life was undoubtedly the creation of the Bibliotheca Historica. The title itself, meaning historical library, reflects the nature of the work. Diodorus did not present himself as an entirely original historian. Instead, he openly acknowledged that he gathered material from many earlier writers and attempted to organize it into one massive, unified history of the world. In this sense, his work functioned almost like an ancient encyclopedia of history, geography, mythology, and ethnography. The scale of the project was extraordinary. The Bibliotheca Historica originally contained 40 books, though only books 1 through 5 and books 11 through 20 survive complete today. The remainder are known only through fragments preserved by later Byzantine scholars and writers. Even in its incomplete form, however, the surviving sections remain one of the most important historical sources for many periods of ancient history. Diodorus organized his history into 3 major sections. The first section focused on the mythical and early histories of both Greek and non-Greek peoples before the destruction of Troy. These books were arranged geographically rather than chronologically. He described the lands, customs, religions, and histories of many regions across the known world. His first book dealt mainly with Egypt, including its traditions, rulers, and monuments. Other books explored Mesopotamia, India, Scythia, Arabia, North Africa, Greece, and parts of Europe. These sections reveal how ancient Greeks viewed distant cultures and attempted to understand the wider world around them. The second part of the Bibliotheca moved from myth into more traditional historical narrative. It covered events beginning with the Trojan War and continued through the rise of Greek civilization, eventually reaching the age of Alexander the Great. This section included discussions of wars, political struggles, empires, and major historical figures who shaped the Mediterranean world. For many events of classical Greek history, Diodorus preserves traditions and details that might otherwise have disappeared completely. The final section of the work dealt with the period following Alexander's death, covering the struggles of his successors and the changing political landscape of the Hellenistic world. Diodorus intended to continue the narrative down to his own lifetime, likely reaching either 60 BC or the beginning of Gallic Wars. Unfortunately, the end of the work has been lost, so historians cannot determine exactly where his history originally concluded. Some scholars believe he stopped writing before reaching Caesar's campaigns, possibly because of age or exhaustion after decades of work. One of the defining characteristics of Diodorus's history is his extensive use of earlier sources. Rather than inventing material himself, he collected information from many historians who had written before him. Among the writers he relied upon were Hecataeus of Abdera, Ctesias of Cnidus, Ephorus, Theopompus, Hieronymus of Cardia, Duris of Samos, Timaeus, Polybius, and Posidonius. Many of these earlier works are now lost, which makes Diodorus especially valuable because parts of their histories survive indirectly through his writing. Although some ancient and modern critics accused Diodorus of relying too heavily on his sources, many historians today recognize the enormous importance of his achievement. Without his compilations, large sections of ancient history would be far more obscure. In some cases, Diodorus is the only surviving source for certain events, peoples, or traditions. His writings preserve valuable information about Greek mythology, Egyptian customs, early Sicily, the wars of Alexander's successors, and the expansion of Rome. Diodorus also differed from many earlier historians because he attempted to write a truly universal history rather than focusing on a single city or nation. Earlier, Greek historians often concentrated on Greece alone, but Diodorus tried to connect the histories of many civilizations into one continuous narrative. He viewed the world as interconnected, and his work reflects an attempt to explain how different peoples, kingdoms, and cultures interacted across time. His style was generally straightforward and accessible compared to some more elaborate ancient authors. He often emphasized moral lessons, showing how ambition, greed, pride, or courage shaped the rise and fall of kingdoms. Like many historians of antiquity, he believed history should not only record events, but also teach wisdom through examples from the past. Despite the loss of much of his work, Diodorus Siculus remains one of the most significant historians of the ancient world. His historical library stands as one of the grandest literary projects of antiquity, preserving centuries of myth, history, geography, and cultural memory. Through his efforts to gather and organize knowledge from countless earlier writers, Diodorus created a bridge between lost ancient histories and the modern world.